Clerk will call the roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1. Andy H. Wynn, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Thickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation today will be delivered by Craig Maxwell from the Audit Department. After the invocation, please remain standing for the pledges.
Morning. If you'll bow your head. Lord Jesus, you told us all not to worry about the future. You showed us how to have the attitude of simple trust that young children have, so that they could place themselves into the caring hands of your Father. And so we ask for the power of your Spirit that we may remain positive throughout all that is ordinary in our daily lives. I know that your touch can change people and situations, and so I ask you to join us in offering to our Father not only the good things of this day, but also the suffering and sacrifices we face. And so may any difficulties and frustration and pain of this day be transformed in your presence for the benefit of other people. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Craig. Agenda announcements. Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, while we don't have a formal announcement relating to our agenda today, there are several things I'd like to mention. First of all, today at 2 o'clock, we have the dedication of the Tom Vandergriff Civil Courts building, and that we should be over there about 1:30, and so we'll start at 2. Also, on Thursday, we have a PEBC board meeting in Arlington, and it's at 3 o'clock. And then finally, members of the court, next Monday morning at 9 o'clock is our budget hearings, which will be held in the courtroom here. So we'll start at 9 and move on from there. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. I would like to just report that Commissioner Brooks did have his surgery. Everything went well last week. He is now home and recuperating and sends his regards and is probably watching us online. Not. So anyway, we're excited and happy that everything went well on that deal. Court members, you have before you our minutes of our regular meeting of August the 4th.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Fickus, you're kind of on the line here today.
Well, I got them all on.
Yeah, somebody's missed. Okay,
Mayor's count.
there you go. Motion passes unanimously. You have before you the consent agenda.
Move for the approval of the consent agenda. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, this morning we're going to ask you to approve the sale of 2 different series of bonds. This will complete it'll do 2 things. First of all, it'll complete the sale of the bonds that this court and the citizens voted in 2006. And then finally, it will also do a significant amount of refunding of existing bonds that we had. We picked up a very generous rate, and we saved the county over $10 million total on the refunding, in fact, a little bit more than that. So it's a good time to go to the market to do this. What I'm going to do is to read a request into the record, and then I'm going to ask Mr. Mednich from First Southwest to come forward and talk about our ratings with the bonding agencies, and then the financials as it relates to these 2 different series. And the 2 different series will be noted as Series 2015 and 2015A. So on item number 1, We're requesting that the Commissioners Court adopt an order authorizing the issuance of Tarrant County, Texas Limited Tax Refunding and Improvement Bonds, Series 2015, specifying the terms and features of said bonds, levying a continuing direct annual ad valorem tax for the payment of said bonds, and resolving other matters incident and related to the issuance, sale, payment, and delivery of said bonds, including the approval and execution of a purchase contract and escrow agreement, and the approval and distribution of a preliminary official statement and an official statement. With that, I would ask if Mr. Mednich would come forward and discuss that issue with the court at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Manius. Honorable Judge and members of the court, I think GK covered it pretty well. There's just a couple of things I'd like to hit on. And first, we do have two transactions. Some of the things overlap, so if you don't mind, I'll kind of talk about some of it together, then we'll take the action separately for the different types of vehicles. But again, you did maintain your ratings of AAA from Moody's and Standard & Poor's, which is very, very good. And one thing, and I've got to read one thing because it made me smile when I looked at it. This is the credit rating report from Standard & Poor's, and it says Tarrant County is rated higher than the sovereign being the United States, because we believe the county can maintain better credit characteristics in the U.S. in a stress scenario based on its predominantly locally derived revenue base. In our view, that pledged revenue supporting debt service on the bonds is limited risk and negative sovereign intervention. I think that says it all for the county. If you wouldn't mind turning to tab number 2. As GK mentioned, this is the 2015A limited tax refunding and improvement bonds. And in this $67 million, we have we have $40,420,000 of juvenile, for the juvenile center, as well as some road and bridge funds. It's about $8.3 million for the road and bridge, $32 million for the juvenile. And we also have in there approximately $32 million of 2007 bonds that have rates of about 5.25%, and that's why we're refunding them. So as you can see here at the bottom of the page, this is the entire deal. This is the refunding bonds and the new bonds. We have a true interest cost of 3.198%, which we were very pleased with. If you'll turn to the second page, you'll see this is the refunding that's included in those numbers. And you'll note that we're refunding it over the exact same time period. All it is for savings. It's about $345,000 a year. The total is $4.007 million, and it's a 10.64% PV savings. We try to get at least 3%, but this is 10.64. So we were very pleased with that transaction. That was a negotiated transaction. The underwriters were J.P. Morgan, Citigroup, Stevens Inc., and Siebert. And it is our recommendation that you award the bonds, and I would be happy to answer any questions on the 2015s.
Do I have a motion?
Thank you. So move.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion, any questions? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
We're now going to move to action item A2. We're requesting that the Commissioners Court adopt an order authorizing the issuance of Tarrant County, Texas Limited Tax Refunding and Improvement Bonds, Series 2015A, specifying the terms and conditions of said bonds, levying a continuing direct annual ad valorem tax for the payment of said bonds, and resolving other matters incident and related to the issuance, sale, payment, and delivery of said bonds, including the approval and execution of a purchase contract and escrow agreement. Mr. Mednich.
Mr. Manus. If you will, I just was on the page on the savings. If you'll turn to the next page in that book, it refers to the 2015A bonds. And as you'll see, that issue is a refunding and improvement bond issue as well. This is a direct placement with J.P. Morgan Chase. And as you will recall, we did something very similar to this for the hospital a couple of months ago. We were able to have a significant amount of savings, and we do here as well. What we determined was, through the direct purchase, it improved the interest rate on this almost 20 basis points, or 0.2%. So it was worth doing. And if you look at the the debt schedule, as you can see, made up of that is 25 million road and bridge funds, and the remainder of it is refunding bonds, and those have rates on them approaching 5%. And as you can see, the true interest cost is 1.97%, so you can see where the savings comes in. It's just the difference in the borrowing rate versus what we refunded the bonds. And then again, this is the total debt service. If you'll turn to the next page, that's a representation of the savings. And again, it's just like the previous. It's over the exact same time frame. We're not extending the debt. It's about $792,000 a year, $8,730,000 total, and that's net of all costs. That's net savings to you. And the present value savings on that is about 14%. If you'll turn to tab 3, this represents these two bond sales, the 3.198 and the 3.97 we just did. If you look back to 2010, these are the lowest rates you've ever borrowed at. Now, you may see a couple of rates in here lower than the 3.19, but the reason is because they're a much shorter average life. These are much longer bonds, and so if you compare bonds to bonds and maturities, these are the lowest you borrowed at, probably way before 2000. I said 2010, it's 2001. So, again, these were very favorable rates based on your rating and based on what you heard. You can see why that you trade so well in the market. And then finally, on tab number 4, this is an important document. This is the official statement that is used. We use this in the rating process to sell the bonds. This is also what is sent to the investor. It contains, we hope it contains, all the information an investor would want to make an investment decision on whether to buy the bonds or not. Another thing that it does, it commits you to a continuing disclosure obligation that annually you will submit updated financial reports based on what this document says. It refers to tables and to audits. And the county is up to date on that. They're sent to the MSRB. And so we feel very good with this transaction and the county overall, and it is our recommendation that you award the second issue to J.P. Morgan Chase. I'll be glad to answer any questions. And I didn't mention, but Bob Dransfield with Norton Rose Fulbright, your co-bond counsel, is also sitting in the audience, and if you have any questions on that, he'd be happy, I'm sure, to answer them.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any questions, any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Are there any other of these bond issues? I mean, I know we're looking at this all the time as far as refinancing. Do we have other ones that will be coming up soon, we hope, with these kind of savings?
If you get closer to the call dates, yes, you can.
Super. So as I look at this, we saved cumulatively, if you look at the net present value savings, or is that the right one to be looking at, or is it just the savings of?
Gross savings.
Okay, so it would be 8,000,007 on one and 4,000,000 on the other?
Yes, sir.
So we're looking at a total of about $12,700,000, almost $750,000 of savings today. Very good. Thank y'all.
Thank you. That's what a AAA bond rating will do.
That's what a AAA bond rating will do for you. That's right.
In your honor, members of the court, I'd just like to make a comment. We have representatives from J.P. Morgan Chase in the audience, Mike Wilson and his group. We want to really tell them thank you for giving us such a rate. 1.97 is a fabulous rate for any governmental entity, and we really appreciate your efforts.
Thank you very much.
Members of the court, if we can go to item number 3. We're requesting that the Commissioners Court receive and file the proposed effective and rollback tax rate information for Tarrant County government. This is in accordance to the local government code as relates to 140.01, and based on the calculations provided by the tax office, Tarrant County's benchmark tax rates for tax year 2015, which is our fiscal year 2016, is as follows. The effective tax rate is .269251 per $100 valuation. The rollback tax rate is .291798. The current tax rate is .264, and the proposed tax rate, which you will see on Monday that we're proposing on the budget that we present, is .264 per $100 valuation. Because of this, because the effective and rollback are higher than the current tax rate, there's not going to be a need for a public hearing on these rates this year.
So again, what we are proposing.
We're asking you to receive and file these.
We're asking to, okay. Now you have a motion.
Second.
A motion, a second. So as I understand this, the current tax rate and the one that we are at this point in time at least proposing is below what the effective tax rate is, and the effective tax rate is what is calculated as the rate needed to raise the same amount of revenue
As we did last year.
this year as we did last year.
That's correct.
Okay? Any other questions? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the court, if we can go to item number 4. Once again, we're requesting that the court receive and file the proposed effective and rollback tax rate information for the Tarrant County Hospital District and at this time. This is also a requirement of the tax code and the truth in taxation. By the way we address hospital district versus the county is different statutes. And that's why you may see some variance on how we approach these two, but the similarities are, in the hospital district, the effective tax rate is .232,887 per $100 valuation. The rollback rate is .251149 per $100 valuation. The current tax rate for the hospital district is .227897, and the proposed tax rate, one that was discussed at the hospital district's budget retreat the other day, is .227897. What we're asking the Commissioners Court to do at this time is to simply to receive and file these numbers. Because of this, there's not a need for any public hearings as it relates to the Tarrant County Hospital District's tax rate.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. The one observation I would make, if you put those two numbers together, the current tax rate for the county and for the county hospital district, the total is .491897. Of the 6 urban counties, that's the lowest,
Yes.
and the next closest to us is over 10% higher than where we currently are, and that's Dallas.
That's correct.
So, again, I feel like we're doing a very good job of keeping our tax rate very much in line and even lower than all of the other 6 or the other 5 urban counties within the state.
Would somebody please put that on Facebook?
It would be helpful.
That would be very helpful.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And
Thank you,
just-
Mr. Manion.
One final comment on the hospital district. They will be coming to the Commissioners Court on August 25th to discuss their FY16 budget. Thank you.
Ms. Tidwell.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have one item I am asking the court to consider, and that's to receive and file the auditor's report of the Tarrant County Elections Office, and you have the response attached. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Move to receive and file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the auditor's report on elections. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Mr. Phillips, big day.
Yes, sir, it is. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
It's requested the Commissioners Court approve change order number 2 to the Scott Tucker Construction Company contract for the 1895 Courthouse West Entry Reconstruction Project.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Looks nice out there.
Thank you, sir.
Very good.
Thank you.
Very good.
We're going to try to have a dedication, rededication, ribbon cutting when it maybe cools off a little bit.
Yeah, good idea.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Below 100.
Yes.
Maybe below 80. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Everything starts at 2 o'clock today?
Yes, sir.
You got the jets lined up and all that?
I'll move to receive and file personnel agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the personnel agenda. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Mrs. Worthing.
Good morning. Our
Good morning.
second item is approval of an extension of a project employee in juvenile services. They currently have a project employee working a pilot project for the delinquency prevention program related to high-risk youth in 4th through 6th grade. This will be of no cost to the general fund as it is grant funded.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our final item is request for approval of out-of-class pay extension effective August 14th through November 11th. This is for the Justice of the Peace Precinct 3. They have an individual working out of class currently.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Mr. Tenasia.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the court.
Morning.
We're requesting line item before you for approval today is a Wellness for Life mobile health services agreement with Texas Health Harris Methodist Hospital in Fort Worth. It is to allow them to park their mobile unit to provide services like mammography and well woman exams at any health events that we may do. And there is no fiscal impact as this is a no-money agreement.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Yep, come on down. Let Jack off.
He had surgery on his shoulder last week, and I understand that he and Commissioner Brooks are having a watch party right now. Keep tabs on us here. So. He should be back on Monday. We have two items for your consideration this morning. The first is RFP number 2015-130. That's for Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance Survey for the Public Health Department. We're recommending the award be made to Clearwater Research in the amount of $273,711, and if approved, we're also seeking contract approval.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our second item is our exemption from competitive bidding for the purchase of drug standards and controls for the medical examiner's office. We bring this to you every year under the 262. We're allowed to exempt certain items for bid with Commissioner's Court approval. So we're asking for approval of that exemption today.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Morning.
I'm doing well. The Sheriff's Office is requesting that the court accept a 2010 Pontiac G6 car that was forfeited to the Sheriff's Office and approve that vehicle's use by investigators assigned to Tarrant County Sheriff's Office who perform background investigations.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Mr. Wright.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm here to ask you to file and accept the tax roll for the 2015 tax year. I want to remind the court this is the first certified roll we've received under the Tarrant Appraisal District's new Aumentum software program. We're going through it very meticulously. It's going to take about 45 days to do that. But I want to remind you that this is an entirely new operating program for the appraisal district. And it's going to take a little longer for us to go through than normally we would. But what this does show in this report, the tax roll, you have an estimated net taxable value of approximately a little over $141 billion for 2015. Any questions? Then I'd ask your approval.
Move to receive and file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Are there any appointments today? There being none, then we'll move on to the claims, including the addendum.
Move approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the claims, including the addendum. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Briefing items, Mr. Manius?
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, we have one item to bring to you this morning. This concerns a discussion on the hospital district's proposed bond package. Mr. Early is here to address the court at this time.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Manius, commissioners, television crews. Thank you all very much. I appreciate being here because I'm just one man and I represent 6,000 folks back at JPS who work hard every day to try to figure out the best health care they can deliver for this county. I'm also here in a way representing an incredible board that you all put over there, which I appreciate. The 11 members that make up that board, and our chair, Pastor Ralph Emerson, is here, which I appreciate, and I've appreciated his support as we try to figure out every day what you do for JPS. The question before us and the question before you as a court will be, should and when can JPS go for a bond election? And what does that mean? And what's the impact? One of the things that I don't want to do is I don't want JPS to be in a position where we're ever an us and a them. It's never going to be an us and a them for us. We have a variety of questions to ask, and we have a lot of answers to provide. We have questions that we need to ask because I think the fundamental question we need to ask is, what kind of health care system does this county want? What kind of health care system can this county afford? And what kind of health care system can this county expect to maintain? Particularly in a county that's growing, particularly in a county that can look back. If you moved to Fort Worth or Tarrant County 5 years ago, you can be an old-timer. Because you can drive down the street and say, I remember when that used to be a vacant lot. I remember when that used to be a gas station. Now that's a restaurant. Now that's a movie theater. It doesn't take you long to have a lot of experiences in the new changes of Tarrant County because it changes every day. That's a plus to you as county commissioners. It's a plus to all the elected officials. And it's a plus to the citizens of Tarrant County who were smart enough to move here. So in that, we've got to figure out how you have a hospital system and a clinic system that best represents this community. And I think we have to ask some fundamental questions in addition to what kind of system do you want. I think one of those fundamental questions is, as a level 1 trauma center that's going to take the toughest of the tough cases and that will take everybody in this room in their worst of situations, whatever your accident, whatever your fall, whatever your circumstance that you didn't intend to receive, you have a very strong possibility of coming to JPS because we're the only level 1 designated center in all of Tarrant County, which we are reviewed for every 3 years. The question is, are we doing what we're supposed to be doing with that level 1 trauma center? Is it advancing the way you want it to advance? And are we providing substance and care for the citizens of Tarrant County? Those are questions that all of us in this county need to ask ourselves. You don't need to be told. You don't need to be told by me or anybody else. It's a judgment call that the citizens of this community need to make. I think we also have to ask ourselves the question, what is the role of the largest teaching hospital? What are we doing to train our future doctors? How do we be certain that in our community we're not in a circumstance of facing physician shortages? And primary care and every other level of care, what are we doing to make sure that we provide that level of care from a training standpoint? Because if we only provide the medical school, then you've only reached up until the last mile of a marathon. And you haven't crossed the finish line until you do the proper residency training programs. And we do those. So the question is, what do we do with those? How effective are we with those? How do we want those to continue? Do we want them to expand, reduce, or change? And that particularly becomes to light today when we have a new medical school that's been announced. So JPS has a responsibility to the medical school that we have, that we're proud of, that this community has put its time, its talent, its effort, and its money into at the state level and at the county level. And the question is now we have the announcement of a new medical school. What does the largest teaching program in town do for that? And that's a fundamental question we need to ask ourselves as citizens as well. I think the other thing we have to ask ourselves is, what do we do in the area of primary care? You can't stop people from going to an emergency room necessarily. But what you can do is present them a healthcare system that is vibrant and strong, so you attempt to reduce the amount of times you come into the emergency room, or that is the first place you start. You got to have a strong primary care system. We have the luxury of having the largest and one of the best residency programs in family medicine in the nation here in Tarrant County. So what do you do with that program? And how do we look? Do you keep it the same as it's been? Do you expand upon it? And what do you do and how do you get there? Those are fundamental questions that we need to ask. The other question is so few of us sometimes take the initiative on tough issues like mental and behavioral health unless it affects our family. We've got to expand that horizon and know that mental health can affect each and every one of us on a basis that you can't even fathom right now, because life can change significantly. And what do we do as the only emergency room that deals with psychiatric patients and helps maintain that lifestyle when you have others in the nation and the state that are reducing some of those services? What role does that mean for us to deal with our own, and how you deal with mental and behavioral health issues? All those questions have to be asked. How do you deal with that changing environment? Because where you are in 1975 doesn't necessarily equate to where you are in 2015 and beyond. Now, to each one of those questions, people are going to have a different view, and they're going to have a different perspective on them. That's all fine. The great luxury that we have in this county and in this country is we have the right to express those views, and we have the right to vote. And that's what we would ask. We would say this community deserves the opportunity to listen to some of those questions, to get answers to those questions, and figure out what you expect, what you want, and what you deserve from your public health care system. And then we can accommodate for that. There may be those that say, no, we want you to stay exactly the way you are. And 6,000 folks back at JPS will be proud to continue to do that. Some may say, we want you to expand, and we want you to look at creating different services for elder care or other programs, and we'll be happy to do that. This isn't an us against them. It's just not. I'm asked by the press, I'm asked by media, I'm asked by folks. That institution at JPS is too good and too strong to be bear-baited into any kind of an argument that pits us against us and them. It's not. I respect anybody and everybody that has an opinion different than I on how we should deliver health care. And if that's a majority of the view of the citizens of this community, not only will I respect it, I'm still incredibly proud to be at JPS. And that's what we're going to do. So what we ask you as commissioners is if you would consider at some point in time putting up a bond election so that we can ask voters what their opinion is. I think it's wiser to have that at a date where we have these questions and we can go out and begin to communicate. Because in the town hall meetings that we had and the outreach that we had, we heard a lot about what can we do for our community clinics? What kind of expansion can we look like in this part of the county? And what are we doing here? And what are we doing there? Those are all helpful to us. And I think that gives us the opportunity and the time to voice those opinions and listen to what people have to say. Whether it's in an actual setting of an organized town hall meeting, or it's the ability to communicate in the world in which we live in today via the computer and social networking type of approaches, or going to a website and getting answers, or it's me standing up and speaking at every opportunity I have, or our board chair or our board members, or you as commissioners, communicating to anybody in any way that we can. That's really what we're about, and that's really what we want to do. It's not a fight. It's just a question of what kind of healthcare system do we want. And what the citizens of this community want is what we will provide them. But I will tell you one thing, that I'm incredibly proud of JPS. I'm incredibly proud of where it's been, and I know where it's going. And I feel that we can deliver services that will best suit the needs of this community so that none of us ever wake up and say, well, why didn't our public hospital do that? Or why didn't we take care of that population over there? I don't want to be a question after the episode. I want to be ahead of the curve at all times. So what we would ask on behalf of our board and behalf of a network is at some point in time, you put up for a vote a bond election. It's not a delay, it's not this, or why did we listen to this group or not that group. It's not what it is. It's just at some point, I think the citizens in Tarrant County should express their opinion on what type of a public health care system we should have in Tarrant County. And that's what we're asking. So that's why I come to you. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. But in context, that's really what we're doing, and that's why we're doing it. We spent a good deal of time looking at this, and now at some point it will be time for the citizens, if you grant them that ability, to weigh in on this issue.
I'd like to make a comment. I agree with all the questions that you brought up. I think those are very relevant questions. In addition to those questions, I think we have to define what you mean when you say county healthcare system. Is it county healthcare, county with a capital C, or is it county as a community? Because it takes more than just JPS to take care of the folks in Tarrant County, including the indigent population. So when we say county healthcare system, I believe that it's more than just JPS. Second, a good question that we have to ask ourselves is, what is our core mission? Why was JPS formed in the first place? What is our core mission? Is it to become a teaching hospital? Is it to become Trauma One? Or is it to take care of the indigent population? What is our core mission? Are we drifting too far away from our core mission? I think we need to ask that question. And third, we have to ask ourselves one question. What is affordable? What can we realistically afford? Realistically, based on past performance, not on some projection without any footing. I think we have to ask those questions as well. And I agree with you, it is not us versus them. All Tarrant County residents and taxpayers are in this together. We want to take care of the indigent population. We want the best health care system for our citizens. They deserve it, and we deserve that. But a lot of times, perception is reality. So it's not so much what we say. It is more important than what we do. One of my favorite sayings, and I'm sorry I cannot remember who said it, he said that what you do speaks so loudly that I cannot hear what you say. And I hope going forward, we will take that saying into consideration and bring our community together so we all can feel like we are a part of this process. So we can take ownership of it and we can shoulder a part of that weight, of that burden, of that responsibility. And I want to thank you for your leadership. I know it is tough, and I know it is hard. And at times it's controversial, but your positive attitude and your positive vision of the future, I believe, will eventually come through. Thank you.
Thank you for your words of wisdom, and I appreciate them. Take them to heart. And it is a very integrated system. What we do at John Peter Smith will have an impact on Texas Health Resources and Baylor, Methodist Mansfield, our HCA facilities, and the cooperative spirit that we've tried our best to foster with them, I think has been very positive. And I think going forward, it is a responsibility of all of us. I would applaud Tarrant County. I've lived in other counties, and I would applaud Tarrant County for what it does for those that are in most need and don't sometimes have the financial resources to do it, and sometimes don't have the ability, whether they have the financial resources or not, they don't have access to a system. And JPS and some of the others in town represent that. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. It is very integrated. Your other 2 points on a core mission and what is affordable are very good questions. And I think all of those will not only be answered, but they'll be interpreted and they'll be seen by all. Some may take an approach over here and some may take an approach over there. I have an incredible amount of respect for all of them. It's how I grew up in my family, of respect for opinions of people who may differ from you. The other thing that I would tell you is your last comment, which I appreciate greatly, and that is it may be a tough job, but it's the most rewarding job I've ever had. And I get to go home every day to a 14-year-old daughter and say I made an impact. And it means a lot to me to do that because I know what we do at JPS, not what we say, what we do. I know how many people leave there and their attitude towards what they have received. So I really appreciate your comments on it being tough. It is tough, but the most rewarding things in life are the ones that present the most challenges. Thank you. I appreciate your comments.
And I want to make sure that you understand, and the audience and the public understand, that I believe there are needs, unmet needs at JPS. We have a very old facility that needs to be renovated. We have a facility that takes care of the psychiatric patients. Okay, and that is outdated, not large enough. We need to take care of that, right? So there are needs in the community that can be met. We can work together to come up with a solution to meet those needs.
Well, I can assure you, Commissioner, no one that I'm aware of has questioned your intentions. I appreciate you saying it, but we don't question your intentions. We will provide you a great deal of respect for not only your opinion, but the people that have put you into office to best represent them. So it is respect that we want to provide you at all times, but never, at least from my perspective, did we question your intentions. It will be respect for those, and that's what we will always provide. As to the others on your court that you serve time with, we'll provide them that same level of respect in their intentions. Yeah, I didn't mean to be in jail, but your colleagues as well. We'll do the same thing. So I appreciate that.
Yes. Thank you.
Any other? You know, I would say that from the core mission standpoint, I mean, I think the Board of Managers needs to look at that. I understand that we play a critical role as the safety net hospital for the indigent within this community. And I know that several folks choose to go to other hospitals as opposed to walking through the door at JPS. I would applaud you and your staff for the improvements that you've made in folks who come in, are seen, as opposed to come in and leave. Because when that happens, then it inundates the other hospitals in the area, and I get a lot of phone calls when that happens. I would also, and I, have the discussion with the board, but I would also hope that we continue to emphasize the core mission of being a teaching hospital. If you look at this community and look at the impact that that facility and that part of JPS has meant to us, probably at least 70 to 80% of the primary care physicians in Tarrant County are products of that teaching program. We already have discussed and talked about the shortage of physicians, not only in our community, but basically across this country. And were it not for, the statistics show that someone who gets through their residency program, that the vast majority of them go two places. One, they stay where they did their residency, or two, they go back home. And so I think we miss a tremendous potential by JPS not continuing that significant role as a teaching hospital. So I know that Chairman Emerson will take Commissioner Wynn's comments to heart, will look through that and identify the core mission and look at the facilities. I appreciate your comment with regards to expanding what I think had been primarily a master plan review of the downtown facility and expand that as we heard and requested from the town hall meetings, to look at that clinic system that we've got set up and see how we might go about improving that. But I appreciate that, and I look forward to us moving forward to respond to questions that we heard through the town hall meetings, and also to respond to the announcement of the TCU-UNT collaboration. So I appreciate very much your comments.
Thank you.
Commissioner Fiskus.
Robert, I want to thank you, but probably more so the board. Chairman Emerson, I'm going to thank you for being here and guiding that board to putting the patient first. That's really, to me, one of the probably the most important thing that we can do is put that patient's care first. But JPS is a whole lot more than just an indigent hospital. If it wasn't, our county taxes would be paying 2/3 of the operations versus only 1/3. Because we do have payers, you do have insured patients, a significant amount in number, and you have those because you're providing the type of service that people want to have. And I've talked to many, many friends of mine who 10 years ago would have said, you know, take me anywhere but there, where today they've gone there for whatever reason, and they had a fabulous experience, and they were put first. Their care was utmost in the minds of the people that work there. So for that, I want to thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, and I appreciate that. Our board has not only made that emphasis, we've made that a strong emphasis, and that is your debate, these questions, always is at the crux and the center of a patient. And when you lose sight of that, you lose sight of what you are. So anytime you mention core mission, it's always a patient-centric issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I'm going to call on Joan Barcelona, who's put in an audience participation form, and ask you to please come forward if you would. Again, repeat your name and your address. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you for allowing me to speak to you. My name is Joan Barcelona, and I live at 7512 Marlboro Drive West in the zip code 76134. I am here this morning because I want to address the need for a psychiatric hospital at the JPS campus. I think that in order for you to make a wise decision, you need to be listening to the patients and the families who utilize the JPS psychiatric facility called Trinity Springs. I am a mother of a daughter who happens to have a lifetime serious mental health disorder. So I have tried to access mental health care within Tarrant County for over 20 years. My daughter was a teen when she was diagnosed with this illness, and she now is well into her 30s. I feel that there is definitely a need for a new psychiatric hospital. In order to access Trinity Springs, usually one has to visit the 10th floor of the main building, which houses the psychiatric emergency unit. I have visited that floor with my daughter, and I have visited that floor when the police department have taken my daughter there. I would say that that unit needs to be relocated, and my dream is that that unit would be relocated in the new psychiatric facility. I think that, and I can tell you, I've experienced trying to take my daughter, who suffers from auditory and visual hallucinations periodically when she is in crisis. I've tried to take her from that parking garage through the main lobby to accessing the elevator up to the 10th floor. And if you ever have to deal with a psychotic patient, that in itself is a big challenge. Once the patient is in that unit, And this is not something that the staff would be wishing for. In fact, the staff would definitely want it to be changed. Sometimes that unit is so overcrowded that patients have to be seated on the floor. Patients have to wait. The last time I visited that floor, I was there for over 24 hours before a decision was made with regard to my patient, my daughter. I should not have had to wait that long. She should not have had to wait that long. It isn't because the JPS staff is insensitive to the care of psychiatric patients. The simple fact is this county has grown and the facility has not met up with the growth of this county. I would say that when you're an agitated patient, when your behaviors are out of line, it doesn't help stabilize you to be crowded with other agitated, unstable people. And in fact, in my daughter's case, it introduces panic attacks, which worsens the whole situation. So definitely, I feel this unit needs to be expanded, and this unit needs to be placed in a new psychiatric facility. Now we come to admission into the unit. If I'm taking my daughter to a psychiatric emergency unit, it's because I can't keep my daughter safe in my own home, and I can't leave my daughter out of my sight. My daughter, when she experiences hallucinations, has usually two avenues of behavior. It's either suicide or runaway behavior. And the last time when the police brought her there, it was due to runaway behavior because I couldn't find her. So I had to request the police department of the city of Fort Worth to help me. Now, I'm not going to be able to take her home, so I'm hoping that there is bed space in Trinity Springs. Sometimes that bed space, due to the increase of population in Tarrant County, doesn't exist. Now the staff at JPS have to go about hunting other psychiatric hospitals in the community that have the bed space to take a patient. So what happens? A patient now whose behaviors, as I said, are out of control, needs to be transported from JPS, probably the psychiatric emergency unit, to another facility, be it Millwood, be it Mesa Springs, be it Sundance, it doesn't matter. But there now is involved a transport of a patient to a safe lock-in unit. And it isn't, as I said, the willing of the psychiatrists, the staff. It is the fact that the county has grown and the county has not kept up with the growth of the population in the area of this emergency psychiatric unit. The third reason I feel we need a larger and expanded psychiatric hospital, it has to do actually with the state of Texas. If a patient in our county is not stabilized within a reasonable, allowable time, which is usually, I would say, max about 10 days, that patient gets moved from our county to Wichita Falls State Hospital. Now, currently in the state of Texas, bed space at Wichita Falls State Hospital is usually maxed out. In that incident where we are dealing with adults, usually, and it's through the goodness and kindness of the administration at JPS Hospital, adult patients are allowed to stay for a longer period of time at JPS. Well, in the case of children, that doesn't happen. They're already maxed out probably at their adolescent unit. Cook's Children's is usually maxed out. So what happens to families and patients that are youth and have to deal with these youth? Well, in our county, in January, there was a family that needed to have a place for long-term care of a youth. There wasn't any bed available at Wichita Falls due to the fact that there's a shortage of child psychiatrists, and they didn't have anybody to cover all the population that they had. That family didn't learn until the month of May, and remember this started in the month of January. They didn't learn until the month of May of an available bed, one in the whole state of Texas that could accommodate a child, and that bed was in San Antonio. Well, I can tell you, as a parent, I would not be willing to take my child to San Antonio, leave my child in a psychiatric facility, and me not be able to visit or understand my child's illness. So that family declined. I think that if we expand this psychiatric facility, it would be a dream for families in our county to be able to have access to long-term care, be able to visit with their youth, be able to understand their youth's illness. These are the kinds of things that families need if we're ever going to get to the point where we can address the beginning of a crisis situation and try to keep a patient stabilized. In my life, over these many years, I've had several times, more than several times, where I've had to deal with a crisis. And for me, I've been lucky enough to be able to find that bed where my daughter could receive medication adjustment, become stable, and I was lucky enough to be able to ask questions so I could better understand her illness and how I and the rest of my family might be able to cope with it. You really do need to consider expanding the psychiatric units at JPS because there are a lot of families that don't have that luxury. And we end up reading about in the newspaper, hearing on the news, reading on the internet, the tragedies that result simply because people can't get psychiatric care in a timely manner. I don't want that for the citizens of Tarrant County. And I have worked with the people at JPS who are very caring, very dedicated, and they want better for those psychiatric patients as well. So I really believe in my heart that you need to hear from the patients and the families that need access to that mental health care. For some of them, that's the only place, the only avenue they have to get the care they need. And we are talking about people, they can't help it if their brain, like in my daughter's case, her brain makes too much dopamine, not enough serotonin, and the medications are utilized to adjust those irregularities. So thank you for listening to me, but please listen to the people in this county and recognize we haven't kept up with the growth.
Thank you very much, Ms. Barcelona.
Your Honor, that's all we have at this time.
Then we'll recess our open meeting and proceed to close to discuss items exempted under sections 551.07107. Having returned from our closed session and there being no business to conduct at this time, we stand adjourned.